We'd like to thank Carifit for sponsoring our first season of the Babywearing podcast. Carifit is not just a carrier, but a whole parenting support package. Get the carrier designed to help you and your baby bond and move together your way. Also get access to the Carifit app, which includes postnatal support in baby wearing, core and pelvic floor, sleep, fitness, and so much more. Check out Carifit and all they offer at www.getcarifit.com. You can also use our code CoorieCarry for a discount when you buy.
Hi, and welcome back to the Coorie and Carry On podcast. I'm Laurna.
And I'm Gemma,
And we are trained consultants.
here to help you carry your baby comfortably.
So this week we're going to talk about a topic that is seen a lot in baby wearing groups and can be a bit of a taboo subject, and it is world facing or forward facing, whatever you say. I usually say forward facing. What do you say?
I usually say forward facing or world facing. It's probably forward facing. I think that's the most common.
Yeah, I know it depends. In some places advertise it in one way and some places don't. And a lot of people think forward facing as facing forward to the parent, but as forward facing, we're talking about baby facing away and facing the world. So it can be quite a tricky subject, can't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of smack talked about it online. There's a lot of misconceptions and I think the internet has a lot to answer for with a lot of baby wearing stuff, and world facing, forward facing is one of them.
Yeah, definitely. And baby wearing groups can be some of the worst as well. And people that want to do it will not get the right support and advice from baby wearing groups because they'll either be slated for doing it or given the wrong information. So let's first go over, it's not rules, but this is the guides to allow you to safely forward face, because you can forward face and do it not safely, but we want to be able to allow you to do it safely if you choose to. So let's go over. So first thing, what is the minimum age that we want to look at forward facing?
So for my money, I would say you don't want to do it any younger than 4 months, with the caveat that if you see a sling professional and they talk to you about doing it earlier, then that is valid. However, if you're just at home, I would say don't do it before 4 months. And that's to do with a multitude of factors, mainly to do with the baby's ability to protect their airway, but also to do with their ability to interpret the world, which I think is a big thing that is often missed in this discussion.
Yeah.
What about you? You still 4 months?
Yeah, 4 months at the minimum, unless there's a reason to do so. But then if there was a reason to do so younger, that would only be done through a consultant at a one-to-one session. So out the box, Joe blogs with a carrier, 4 months at the absolute minimum, but baby has to have good head and torso control. So when we talk about torso control, that means that they're able to kind of obviously not sitting up, but they're able to hold themselves up and hold their head up, not in that kind of floppy stage when you hold them, because obviously that's the big issue, isn't it? Flopping forward.
Yeah, it's that chin touching the chest. And some people might have seen it as the bendy straw, where if you bend a straw forward,
description, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great one. So if you bend a straw in half, it closes the straw, you can't use it. So for the child, if they cannot support their chin to remain off their chest, they cannot world face. So that's why we say 4 months is sort of a guidance, because some children haven't reached that developmental stage yet. Most children who are developing along a standard timeline will
and we're talking about full-term babies here.
Obviously,
yeah. Prem babies or anything, then it would be a different kind of kettle of fish, isn't it?
Yeah, same with additional needs kids. If your child has low tone or has any sort of breathing issues, we would always recommend you see somebody just to support you, to make sure that there's no risk. The thing as well with some babies, we say 4 months, but we've talked about this in previous episodes where we've talked about just the size difference in some children. I've got very petite children because my husband's a very petite person, and it certainly doesn't come from me. But the height of your child is important. Their chin must clear the top of the carrier. If you put them in that carrier and face them away from you and their chin is not very clear of the top of the carrier, you cannot world face them. It is just not worth
Yep.
the risk because you're going to obscure that airway. So even if they can get that core control, a good way to test that is to try sitting them down. And if they can, they don't have to be sitting independently, but if you were to sit them in like a high chair or something and they can maintain their seat in a sort of supported sit, that would be a good way to know, I would say.
Yeah, rather than them like slumping to the side or just kind of
Yeah.
flopping over straight away. Yeah. And when you talk about the size of baby, you could have 5, 4 months old, but they're all going to be different lengths. Some have a longer torso and short legs and a long torso, and some are chunkier, some are high centile, low
Yeah.
centile. They all differ. So 4 month is not just because your baby is 4 months doesn't mean that they're going to fit and be suitable for forward facing. So it is
No.
very much sort of, it will depend on the baby. And obviously that's what we're for. So if you are wanting to learn to forward face then and wanting to try it, then please reach out with your local sling library or ourselves and ask us, and we will be happy to support you. Because the best thing is doing something safely. So just because you can doesn't mean you need to as well. And that's a big thing. A lot of people think that forward facing is like a stage that they get to and they have to do it, isn't it? Which is a
Yeah.
hard one. It's like, it's
I've
not,
never
if you've got
forward
Wonder
faced,
Weeks,
yeah.
it's like 4 months old, you can forward face in a
Oh,
carrier now. It's not
don't
on
start me on Wonder
there.
Weeks.
It's not there. It's not a developmental stage that your child gets
No.
to and it's like, right, now you can do this. It's not there.
No.
You don't ever have to do it.
It's that children get really nosy about 4 months. So
Oh
that's what I
yeah,
was
they're
saying
so
earlier about
nosy.
I mean, mine were nosy from the jump, but they get worse at 4 months. I think that's it, is that people don't understand that when we talk about your child being developmentally ready, people think we purely mean physically. But carrying is just such a developmental milestone for children. Like you would have been carried if you were a great ape from birth, and you would have been carried for like 20 hours a day, a minimum, So for us to not carry our children is, from a biological and evolutionary standpoint, really, really against what we are primed to do.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at should children be world facing, you can absolutely do it. There are carriers in the market that will support that. However, you don't need to turn them around. You could put them on your hip. And that affords them a different level of developmental control so that they are not constantly looking ahead. They have some autonomy to turn their head and look away.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's often missed in a lot of online discussions is people talk a lot about physical development, so protecting the airway. And I'm never going to skimp on talking about protecting the airway. But we're not, a child is not just a collection of body parts. And so you have to look at how are they developing socially and psychologically, and world facing them can overwhelm them to the point at which they go to sleep, which you
Is
absolutely cannot
another
do world
big,
facing.
massive safety issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that because baby is quiet and they're facing forward or they fall asleep, then they're happy in that position. And that's not always the case. They can be so overwhelmed that they don't react. Yes, some babies love it, and that's absolutely fine. And you do see happy babies and they're kicking their legs and they're quite happy. But some babies are just like, what is this? Because obviously, when a baby is facing away, they can't see their parent. So they think their parent has disappeared. So we have that
Yes.
object permanence that when baby can't see you, even though you're behind them and you might be talking to them and they can feel your body, you don't exist to them. So
Yeah.
they're basically flying through the air, facing out. That's what it seems to babies. And imagine if you were just sat in a wee thing with your arms out, your legs out, and you're just flying through the air all through in a busy place with lots of people
Yeah.
coming at you or looking up at things really close or like Christmas lights and stuff. It can be really overwhelming, and they're just like in this, what is going on? So if you do forward facing, please monitor your baby as well. Don't just put them in and think, right, we're going out for a day, I'll just get on with things. Always check in. Use selfie mode on your phone or a sling mirror to check on them, or any reflective items that you've got, check
Yeah.
in on them. And as well, if you're not checking in on them, then you might not have noticed that they've gone to sleep. So you always have to do it. So let's
Yeah.
talk about time limits and time guides for forward facing, because this is another one that gets
It's
a lot
contentious,
of,
yeah.
yeah. It's a grey area, I would say.
Yeah.
It can
There's no
depend.
evidence. Yeah.
No,
There's no
no.
studies, and that makes it really hard for us as professionals to say, here is clear guidance, because on average, I would say the community, the professional community would say somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes at a time world facing, somewhere in that
Yeah.
bracket. Um, and again, we say that because we're talking about that developmental overwhelm, the risk of falling asleep. And we've not said what the risk is with sleep. The risk with sleep is we close the airway, the chin will
Yep.
reach down and touch the top of the carrier, or the chest will
Flop
close
over.
that airway. So because your child has very low
Especially
muscle
if
tone,
baby doesn't fit in the carrier as well. So if
yeah,
you've got a baby that's already, their chin is in the carrier when they're awake and then they fall asleep, then that's even more, because not only are they slumping forward, the carrier is then covering their
there's
whole
fabric.
airways,
Yeah,
and that's a huge red flag and a big risk.
yeah. And again, we're not telling you not to do it because we're trying to impose rules, or because I mean, personally, I am a very laissez-faire carrier. As long as it's safe, I don't care how you carry.
Yep.
But the one thing I will not mess about with is an airway. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
for that is I can't fix a smothered child. That's not something I
Mm-hmm.
can do. So I can fix it if your carrier doesn't fit optimally or if it's not comfortable, I can fix that. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot help if your child's airway has been compromised. So that's why you'll often hear sling consultants be very, very crisp about protecting the airway.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I'm just like, if your child does not fit in the carrier world facing, they do not world face. And that doesn't matter if they're 4 months or if they're 8 months. If they don't fit, they don't fit.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean they won't fit a different carrier, and
Mm-hmm.
again, that's why, I mean, we bang on about this a lot, going to see sling libraries and consultants, and it sounds like we're just looking for money, but it's not.
No.
It's really the best way to make sure you're carrying the way you want to safely.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And we know all of
because,
the carriers as well. Like,
yeah.
you maybe only have seen what you've looked at on Amazon, or what
Mhm.
you've seen in your friends using, or baby group, or in a Babywearing class. But we know all of the carriers and all of the options. So we might pull out something and show you that might be suitable that you've never heard of before. Doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
not a great carrier. It means that this is probably the best one that's going to suit you, not all the ones that you've seen beforehand.
Yeah.
And that's why we have that knowledge and experience and training to be able to support you. And that's what we
Mhm.
want to do, to support you carry safely.
Exactly. And yeah, so I think with talking about time limits, the reason I would say no more than half an hour is, again, to do with protecting the airway, making sure they don't fall asleep, but also with your child world facing. There was a really good advert a few years ago, actually. It was an advert for raising awareness for autism, I think, and it was a child walking through a shopping centre, and it would zoom in on like noises and lights, and it would show you all
Mm,
these things that this child was being overwhelmed by, and how they
hmm.
eventually had their meltdown. And I was like, that very much feels like to me what it must be like to be a baby world facing who cannot interpret. They can't see very well at that point, so things are very blurry.
Hmm.
Again, I don't think we have a as a collective, I don't think we have a good understanding of how poor babies' eyesight is and how long it takes them to actually be able to
Yeah.
see anything world facing. You
Hmm.
know, it takes a good 9 months for them to actually be able to see across a room. Their eyesight is very poor.
So that's
So it
another
doesn't need
thing
to
as
be.
well. People
Yeah.
think that baby needs to be forward facing because they want to see. And yes, they can see a wee bit more. So there is a bit
Mhm.
more that they can see clearly, but not far enough that they could look out and see everything. So imagine if you're
Mhm.
looking out with like squinted eyes, or like blurred, like scratch glasses or something,
Yeah.
that you can't
Oh.
see everything, and they're all zooming towards you and coming close and coming right up and be like, hello, hello. Then that can be really really overwhelming. I think that would be overwhelming for me as well, even as an adult.
Well,
So yeah,
that's
imagine
what I
that as a
usually
wee
say
baby
to,
when they don't have that
yeah.
understanding.
Well, I say that to my clients a lot. I'm like, imagine everything you saw from getting out the car to coming to see me. You have the brain capacity to separate out what is important and what isn't. You're able to say,
Mm.
well, I saw lots of people downstairs, but that's fine because that they're just random people and my brain doesn't
Mm.
acknowledge them. It's like when you're driving and you're tired and you suddenly are at
Mm.
home and you're like, how did I get here? Because because your brain just
Autopilot, like,
hasn't
oh my
filed it.
God.
Yeah. And that's probably telling you more about how I drive. But
Oh, we've
it
all done it.
files it away. Yeah. But if it doesn't file it because it's not important. These are not memories that you need to keep.
Yeah.
But you have made decisions, you've went along, blah, 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 and your brain's went, useless, put it away.
Yeah. I'm home safe,
However,
that's all.
to be fair, that
Hopefully.
is how my brain deals with most information at the minute. Just useless, go away. Um, but for babies, they don't have the ability to separate out important facts from non-important facts. So they see and feel everything. They hear, see, taste, smell,
Hmm.
touch everything. Now, that does not mean that your baby who you think likes world facing doesn't like world facing. It doesn't mean that. I mean, your baby
Hmm.
might like world facing. They might like facing out
Yeah.
the way. That is absolutely fine. I've got a friend whose baby wouldn't settle any other way than world facing. In a hard hip
Hmm.
seat carrier as well. It's the only
Mm.
way you would settle. And do you know what? They have a great time carrying. They love it.
Yeah.
And he's older than I would generally recommend to world face as well. Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter. They have a good time carrying. That's how they're able to bond. I love that for them. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter that it, in inverted commas, breaks the rules. Don't care. Don't care.
Yeah.
Because it's safe.
It's not so much as rules as guides. We're
Mhm.
not here, we're not rule makers, we're not the sling police,
No.
we're not here to give you into trouble for doing things wrong.
The way you
We're
want to,
here,
yeah.
yeah, we're here to support you to do it safely or as safely as possible for you and your child. And
Mhm.
sometimes that might look slightly different for different people. So you talked about there about how it would be slightly longer or than you would advise. So let's talk about
Yeah.
the maximum time for or maximum age that we would
Yeah.
want a child to be forward facing and why. So,
Mhm.
what would be the maximum age that you would forward face a child?
For me, it's about a year, 9 months to a year. The reason for that is they get big. They get so
Mm.
big, they get long, their legs kick you. They also, the older they get, like I say, the more they can see, the more mobility they get. So you've gone
Hmm.
from this little sort of stationary lump on your chest that just sort of sits and coos and has a wee look at things and maybe reaches a wee arm
I miss
to
that stage.
I know they're very cute. But then to a feral toddler that's trying to grab things off shelves and, poke things in the eyes and trying to
Yeah.
get places. And it goes from carrying a sack of tatties to carrying a wriggling puppy. Do you know what I mean? It is,
Yep.
and the weight that that puts on your shoulders and the way that that pulls on the carrier, it puts a lot of strain and stress on the carrier's body.
Hmm.
So there's nothing per se wrong with carrying world facing for longer. Um, and again, although I say half an hour as the amount of time that I would recommend you carry, if you carry for 3 hours world facing, as long as it's safe, there's nothing to say that you cannot do that. It's just
Hmm.
from a developmental standpoint and from a protecting the airway standpoint, we typically recommend 30 minutes. But again, every baby's different, every carrying dyad's different. And
Hmm.
age-wise, it's the same thing. Starting somewhere around the 4 month mark, finishing somewhere around the 1 year mark would be
Hmm.
my general guidance.
Yep.
But I would also say as of 6 months, you can get them on your back.
Hmm.
So
And it's a
I
lot
find it much
comfier as
comfier.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a lot
so
comfier.
much.
It's more economically supportive on your body as well. Ergonomically, not economically.
Both
Not car.
actually.
Well,
No,
yes,
it
yes,
is both
true.
because you have more options for carrying. There are so few
Yes.
carriers that actually do world facing that
Yeah,
do it safely
exactly.
that it is economically more sound to buy a carrier that is comfortable for back carrying than for world facing.
Yeah, because a lot of the time you might buy a carrier because you want the world facing option, but then it doesn't really work really well as a back carrier. Or what you will find with most carriers that offer the forward facing is the straps and the panel at the top will be very narrow because they need to be able to support that baby in that forward facing position.
Mhm.
A carrier that does not offer forward facing will be wider, so the straps will be wider apart and the top of the panel will be longer. And this is because the panel shape has to change to offer that forward facing option. So that's something as well, that if you like when your child's on your back, they might want their arms out. But if you've got a forward facing carrier, because that space is very small, they're going to struggle to have their arms out. So then they might not be
Mhm.
as settled on your back because they can't get their arms out. They can only have their arms out the side,
Yeah.
which gives them less freedom to kind of move around and look as well. So that's
Mhm.
something, just because it can do back carrying doesn't mean if you've got a carrier that does loads of things, it's going to do a few things really good and everything else
Yeah.
okay, isn't it? That's what a lot of carriers as
Yeah.
well. Just because it does
I
everything
think
like
there's a
a
lot of
Swiss Army
carriers.
knife.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you get a lot of carriers that are trying to be everything to everyone. And then you
Mm.
get other carriers that are very niche and they're like, I will do one thing and I will do it well.
Mm.
Um, and it depends on what you're looking for. So I may as well talk about the types of carriers that
Yeah.
actually do exist. We can tell you some brands. So
Yes.
obviously we have our fabulous sponsor, Carifit.
Mm-hmm.
They will do a world-facing position. They've got they've got magic armholes as well for your like guidance for
Yes.
your
Yeah, yeah,
baby's
yeah.
arms to
So
go through
there's,
little
yeah,
loops,
on
which
the
is interesting.
straps, the wee elastic, it just means that baby's shoulders aren't being pushed back. They're able to get out and have more freedom for kind of waving about and shoplifting and grabbing stuff as well. And it offers a really,
Yeah,
you know,
shoplifting
that's
is
the truth.
accurate.
That more happens when you
Yeah, they're
back
just like, oh, a
carry.
biscuit.
Yeah. Or like, oh, freebies. Oh, a TV. I've had so many issues with shoplifting children when I back carried. I would go into the shop
Yeah.
and sometimes I would like hand them something from the shopping to hold just to keep them occupied and
Oh yeah.
then get out to the car, unwrap them, take them off, and all these things would fall out. And I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, do I really want to rewrap to go back in the shop to pay for all these things? Or it's like, oh my God, we've been shoplifting, waiting for the security to come running out. Hey, you've got something. Like, oh, damn it. The amount of times I've had to do that walk of shame, like, sorry, my child has this.
My son has a really nice kids book. I mean, he's too old for it now, but it's called A Ride on Mama's Back, and it's
Yes.
have you read it? It's
Yes,
for anybody
I've
who
got
hasn't.
that right
It's
there.
yeah, it's a baby and an African kanga or Katenge, whatever you want to call it, and they're on the mum's back, and the shop as they go around the market, the shopkeepers keep giving the baby something, and so the mum takes off her basket at the end, and she's just like, "Where did all this stuff come from?" And the baby's like,
But the baby, everything that the shopkeeper gives, the baby puts
"Yeah,
some in the basket and eats one of
yeah."
the things. So the mum at the end thinks, "Oh, I've been shopping all day. Baby's going to be starving." The baby's like absolutely
Yes.
full to burst and absolutely snoozing on her back. Oh, it's such a
Yeah,
brilliant book.
it's a great
Oh, we
book.
will link. We'll need to find the link and we'll
Yeah,
put that in the show notes. So you need to go and read that book. It's a great one for kids because it's
it's
got
lovely.
counting in it and it's very colourful and it's a
Yeah,
beautiful book. So good. Anyway,
it's just
what were we
beautiful, yeah.
talking about?
Distracted. Yeah, so types of
Distracted as
carriers.
usual.
So
Yes. So
so yeah, so we've
brands
got Carifit,
that
obviously.
do, yeah,
Mm,
and these are brands, we're going to talk about brands first that do a really good forward facing, world
yeah.
facing option. So not all carriers that have the forward facing option offer a really great position. When we talk about a great position, we talk about that nice bucket seat and that nice supported bum. So you get that nice pelvic tuck on the reverse, kind of facing
Yeah.
out as well. So
Yeah.
Carifit, as we know, because of that lovely stretchy fabric, it molds really nicely under the bum
Mhm.
and offers a really nice supportive one. What's next?
Yeah. You would have Ergo Baby and Tula, who
Mm-hmm.
have I mean, the carriers are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They do both offer a very nice outward facing bucket seat. They're not my favorite carriers by a long shot, personally, for my body.
Mm-hmm.
I just I don't mind the Ergo as much as I mind the Tula, but it's just to do with how it fits on my body. Ugh,
Yeah.
it's not nice.
And that's why there's so many options and that's why
Yeah.
not every but when we talk about these brands, these brands both have lots of different options. So
Yeah.
first, the Tula is probably easiest to describe. The Tula, if you're looking for a Tula, it's the Explore. That's the only one that offers forward facing. You have the free
Yeah.
to grow, the standard, the light, the toddler, the preschool, all of those, and the half buckle, they don't do forward facing.
No.
So for Tula, it's only the Explore. For Ergo, they have loads of different versions now. They come
Yes.
out with new ones all the time. It's mainly the older options, so like the original and the sport and like the ones with the Velcro
Oh,
waist. So
yeah.
they don't
What's it
do
called?
is that I
Yeah.
think that's the original, isn't it? With the Velcro
The
waist.
original had the Velcro waist, and then there's the other
Yeah.
one that had those weird pulley bits in the middle on the chest panel. I can't remember
Oh,
what it's
that's
called now.
the Adapt.
Adapt, that's the one. I knew it began with an
Adapt,
A.
but the
That doesn't world
Adapt
face.
does do no. The Adapt doesn't face. So that's only parent facing and back carrying, which it does really nice, and that's a really nice one because it's nice and adjustable as well. And then you have obviously all the new versions of Ergo. They
Yeah.
all do forward facing. So
Yeah.
the Deluxe, the newest version, the Dream, the Breeze,
The
the 360,
360.
the Omni. When you look at the Ergo Omni means outward mode, no insert, which is quite clever. So if you've got an
Yes.
Omni, it does, and it doesn't need the insert, which is, we don't like the
Yes.
inserts. We'll talk about that in another
Yes.
episode, I think.
I'm not, yeah, I don't like anything that requires additional bits and pieces. I like my
Yeah,
carrier to be all in
straight
and of
on.
itself. Yeah. Because otherwise I'll
Yes.
lose bits. I'll lose spare bits all the
Yeah.
time.
Like just
If
give me
there's,
one thing to deal with.
yeah, I don't need the additional straps and buckles and even if it's a great carrier, it really puts me off.
I know. It's like, don't make it complicated for me. Even us as consultants, we're like, keep it
Yeah.
simple, please. Just give me a
Every
wrap.
every consultant just has a box of random bits that we've lost and found
Yes, and
again and then don't
hoods.
know where they belong.
Bits
Hoods,
and
hoods
hoods and straps
everywhere.
and
God.
clips. Oh, yeah, random bits.
Yeah.
So, what other brands or carriers do you suggest are a good option for forward facing?
So I would always reach for a Baco, either a Gemini or an 8. And the reason
Hmm.
for that, now they are narrow bases,
Hmm.
so they don't give you that massive bucket seat. However, they do provide a very comfortable and economically viable world-facing carrier. They are much cheaper than other options.
Yep.
So I would go for
And it's quite
them.
a simple
If
carrier as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. What I like about the Gemini comes in, I want to say about 80, 90 quid, somewhere around there.
Ah, I think so.
It's not too expensive. It doesn't last a huge amount of time, but if you're only looking for a carrier for sort of the first year and then you want to
Mm.
sort of go to a toddler carrier after that, Gemini is a great option. It works really well with small babies. You get it in a sort of nice gel fabric, so it's really cool for the summer.
Mm.
It's a nice carrier, and what I like about the 8. The 8 lasts longer. It lasts about 18 months to two. The 8 does
Mm.
have a wee cushion in it though that you can take in and out,
Ah, yeah.
which I'm not a huge fan of the cushion, but I do like that it's got a dual adjust on it.
Hmm.
So I do like the 8 a lot. And again, the 8, you've got that gel panel, and often it has a zip that you can then close up
Yeah,
for the colder months. So
which is quite
that's
nice.
nice. Mm.
Hmm.
Um,
And I think Baby Bjorn that we talked to Annika about, some
mhm.
of them, they all offer forward facing, but some of them
Yeah.
offer a better position than others. The
Yeah,
only
the
thing with
harmony
Baby
was
Bjorn, yeah, the
yeah.
Harmony offers a really nice one. The Move actually can offer a really nice position in
Mm.
forward facing because it's got those wee like knee puller upper adjuster bits,
Yeah.
which you can get that nice kind of bucket. But the only thing with the Baby Bjorn is you really have to focus on getting that good position because if you're just going to slap baby on and pull the fabric up, it's not going to give you the best position. With other
Mm.
ones, you can kind of have a wee fiddle and do a pelvic tuck and get a good position. But the Baby Bjorn, you do really need to get baby in the position before you bring the fabric up. So they can be a wee bit more difficult, but they still offer it. Now,
Yeah.
let's talk about this is a big one. Carriers that offer forward facing but are not actually designed for forward facing. And there's a lot on the market at the minute because everyone wants forward facing. So a lot of brands will come out, they'll do the design, they'll come out with a carrier, they'll advertise it, and then somebody uses it wrong and they're like, oh no, yeah, you can do that as you might like. Might not be safe, but you can do it. So this is a huge
There
one.
are some.
It grinds my gears. It's so much.
There are some that are sort of retrofitted for forward facing. The one that comes to
Mm,
mind for that would be Artipoppy. Artipoppy,
hmm
Artipop. Don't know exactly how you're supposed to pronounce it.
Art,
Um,
Pope?
I,
I don't know.
um, but they came out with a sort of cinch to add on to your carrier to narrow it. And the
Mm,
reason the cinch is important is that what makes so the reason when we're saying carriers aren't designed for world facing, it's not so much to do with the seat, because your baby still needs to be as close to knee as possible.
hmm
Um, but what we're talking about is the width of the panel and the pressure pushing the legs open too far because your baby doesn't have the muscle control to pull them in or the
Yep.
strength to pull them in.
hmm
So when we're talking about world facing, a lot of these carriers, you can physically put your baby in facing away from you.
hmm
Um, but the issue with that is it will often splay your baby's legs too wide and make it very uncomfortable for them, and they'll not be able to articulate that to you.
hmm
And at best, they'll just start crying at you, and at
hmm
worst, they might just be in pain and not be able to tell you.
Yeah.
So that's
It's
why we
because
want you to.
the panel usually comes like when baby's in that forward facing position, the straps at the side of your body where it attaches to the shoulder
Mhm.
straps will come like just above baby's knees. So
Yeah.
that will be pulling it back and pulling baby towards you, which will
Mhm.
then arch their back as well, possibly because
Mhm.
that carrier hasn't been designed. So what do we look for in a carrier that has been designed, has been thought about adding at the beginning rather than adding it on for TikTok's sales? What do we look for in a carrier to offer forward facing? What does it need to have?
So for my money, I would like to see an adjustable seat so that we can ensure that it's knee to knee. So you'll see that on most of the carriers that we've talked about, not most of them, all the ones we've talked
All of
about so
them.
far today. Yes, you will see an adjustable seat where you can make it narrow or wide. You'll also see, and this is what I was saying about the Artipop, the ability to narrow that center panel. So the panel that comes up your baby's back or front. On the Ergo Baby, you'll often see it as sliders that start wide and you push them in and it narrows to a sort of hourglass shape. You see that with
hmm
the Tula as well, where you've got buttons that you button it in. You see it with the Carifit, you've got sliders on there.
hmm
Um, with the Babybjorns, they are just designed differently. They're designed to
Yep.
be in that position. So they have a slightly narrower body panel as it is. The Art Poppy, they retrofitted it by sending out, or you could purchase a cinch
hmm
that you put around the chest panel
Goes
and
like in
tighten
the
the chest
inside of the
panel.
panel, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Aye,
yeah.
so it pulls,
So,
it like loops round the straps
mhm,
at the side and pulls it in
yeah,
at the inside.
to
But
narrow
then
that chest panel.
I wonder if they've done testing on that because then that
I
would
think they
be
must
more
have.
strain. Yeah, they would have had to be able
They
to
would have
offer
had
it.
to. Yeah.
But that just shows that something's been added on because it hasn't been designed that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that it's a good or a bad carrier. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's
hmm
just as consultants we can see it was never designed to be used that way.
hmm
However, people were using it that way, and so the
Yep.
company have went and said, let's test it. Let's put out something to make it as safe as possible and to make it as comfortable as possible.
hmm
So certainly you can you can retrofit some carriers, but when we're talking about safety and testing, it is quite important that your carrier has been tested for that position.
hmm
Because there are carriers you can use to world face that have never been tested in that position, and it is dangerous to use a carrier
hmm
in a way that it's not been designed if you do not have the knowledge or experience to use it in a way it's not been designed. And again, that's where we would say come to us
Yeah.
because we have the ability to determine what's safe with certain carriers and what they can and can't do because of
hmm
the training that we go through.
Yeah. And it's the weight as well. So if you're changing the position of where the weight is sitting in a carrier and putting more
Hmm.
strain in a pull-in direction when
Yep.
baby's forward facing, then if that carrier has not been tested in that position, then that's where you'll have issues and bad things can happen, basically, and that's not what
Yes.
we want to see. You'll see there's a lot. I'm not going to mention brand names, because if you look at my socials, you'll already know that I don't like this brand. It's not naming any names, but there is a really big brand at the minute. Well, they're not really a big brand, but they market themselves as a big brand that have a carrier that they're very cheap and they say that they can forward face. Now, this carrier has a very wide panel. So if this panel cannot adjust in any way, then how can that safely support a forward facing? On their website, it says it has not been tested for this, but then in their TikTok lives and their promotions, they say that it can be. So this is a red flag as well for a company that
Yeah.
has conflicting information. And so from now that you've listened to this and you've understood what needs to happen on a carrier to offer a forward facing, the panel does not adjust. So it'll adjust at the base. The base does not matter. That's adjusting where baby's hips support. What we want to see is the panel in the middle. So between the straps that clip at the sides, we want to see that change shape in some way. So if that cannot change shape, then that's not going to offer a forward facing position. So please don't buy that carrier and think that you can forward face, because you cannot. And it's a very, very wide panel. So it
Yeah.
doesn't fit a lot of babies either. And when they fit, then they're not going to last very long because the panel is changed shape. That's another
And
thing with,
no, it's okay.
when we're talking about some carriers that offer forward facing, because of the changes on the panel and how it's designed, that panel is usually slightly smaller than a version that can't forward face, aren't they? So you might not get as long out of a carrier that can forward face
Yeah.
with one that can't.
Yeah. So that's, as oddly enough, what I was just going to say is that some carriers, when you're looking to purchase a carrier, if you think I need to world face and then your baby never world faces, you're going to limit your ability to find a good, safe, comfortable carrier to maybe 10 carriers or less. If, however, you're willing to try hip carrying or back carrying as an alternative, because you can hip carry from 4 months, and quite frankly, I find hip carrying much more comfortable than world
Yeah.
facing. Um, and again, there's no time limit to hip carrying. They can sleep hip carrying. They can carry hip carrying from, I mean, I was carrying my son in a hip carry when he was 7, so it's
Yep.
it's one of these things where there is no limit to hip carry. So if you were to use a carrier that had world facing and that was all you wanted, you are going to limit yourself. If you are willing to look at hip carrying and back carrying as alternatives, you are going to make sure that you have an unlimited number of carriers at your disposal. You are going to be able to do much more with much, you're going to you're going to get more bang for your buck, essentially, because you're
Yes.
going to be able to spend money on the carrier that you want rather than
It's going to
one
last
feature of a
longer.
carrier. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about, if you buy a carrier that's going to do you from 3, 4 months up to age 18 months or 2, and you want to forward face, you've only got a wee small window of forward facing.
Yeah.
So if you're paying for a carrier just because you want to do this, then you're going to lose out on all the other features, like what we talked about, the panel size and everything. So if somebody comes to me and they say, okay, I want to forward face, I'm say, okay, here's 4 or 5 options that is going to suit you and is going to do, but they won't last as long. If you're like, oh, I would like to do it, but I don't really mind if we do it or not. Okay, here is 20 options that we can look at that is going to work for you and last you longer as well. So it depends on what you're looking for as a whole. If you just want to do it and maybe you're only going to be doing it for carrying for a year, then yes, get one that forward faces if you want to do that, because then you might not be carrying long term. But what you find is when you start carrying and you're carrying comfortably and safely, then you're going to carry longer and you're going to want to continue that because you realize how comfy and nice it is and baby loves it. So hip carries is, I think we can have a whole other episode on hip carries, and I think we might need to, because that's another hot topic at the minute. But hip carrying is so much it's just a really nice option. It's a more natural option as well. So once babies get to about that age where they are ready for forward facing, you will find that you will naturally start carrying your baby on your hip. So once they've got a good head and torso control, when you're carrying in your arms, you will throw them on your hip, cock your hip, and use your arm to support. So why not use a carrier to offer that position instead, which feels more natural than putting them in a different position to support a carrier. So you're fitting baby into a carrier rather than the carrier supporting baby, which I always talk about. You want the carrier to support baby's natural position rather than fitting them into a carrier. So yeah, there's lots of buckle carriers that offer hip carries, anything that clips. So when the buckle's on the side of the panel, either side on the front, if these bits have buckles and clips and undo, then that carrier will be able to forward face, hip carry. Talking about forward facing too much. So yeah, if it has clips at the side, it will be able to cross the straps, which means you can hip carry. And it's a really nice option. I love hip carrying. It just feels
I
more
love it.
natural, doesn't it?
Yeah, I find as well that most people do end up hip carrying in arms. Most people wouldn't world face in arms. They typically would put their child on their shoulders or put them on their hip to let them see the world in arms. And so I think often with carrying, it's best to replicate how you would carry in arms because it's what's going to be comfortable for your body. Not always, not always. It's a good place to start, but I love a hip carry, especially in a ring sling. It is my do or die. It's my favorite carrier. But
Can't be a ring sling. It's lovely.
no, I love a ring sling. But I would say, I think what a lot of people think with hip carrying is that you're going to be really off balance. It's going to be sore. It can be. I mean, because you are carrying
It
the
can
weight
be a
on one side of
Marmite
your
option.
body. Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But you can use buckle carriers to do a hip carry. And I think while a lot of the instruction manuals will show it, I don't think it's something that people recognize as an option because they don't see it very often. It's not usually done. I know certainly when I show my clients, I'm like, so this is them on your front, and then if we loosen the strap, burl them round, and then tighten that strap,
You
and
go,
they're
whoop,
like, oh
whoop,
my
whoop.
God, yeah, one arm up, one arm down, we're good.
Yeah, and they're like, what?
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
it's
And the fact that
always
it's not changing baby's position, they're in that same position just on the side. They can have an arm out like a wee trucker and see what's going on
yeah.
and reach and do their shoplifting that way. They can have a look and they can fall asleep. You can tuck that arm back in and swing them back to the front. So when you are using a carrier that does forward facing, if they do fall asleep or get sleepy that you need to turn them around, you're going to have to change some settings, possibly take the carrier off and turn them back around and do it. When you do a hip carry, it's very simple to just zoop straight to the front and they're back in that comfy position.
Yeah, it's great as well if they fall asleep on your hip and you want to move them back into a centered chest position, then again, you're not having to, like you say, take the carrier off, turn them around, wake them up, and then because that's what's going to happen
But
when you move them.
no one ever wants to wake a
Yes,
sleeping baby.
we don't want to do that.
No.
But yeah, so if your baby's on your hip, all you're going to do is loosen your carrier a bit and then scoot your baby 6 to 8 inches around your body and then put the carrier strap back on your shoulder. It's a much less movement. It's a much less obvious change to the child, so the child will often sleep through it. At worst,
And
the babies
also you
I've
don't need
seen,
to though. You can keep them sleeping on your hip
yeah,
as long as you're comfy and baby's positioned, just adjust their position a wee bit, but you don't even have to swap them back to the front. You can just keep them on the hip as well.
yeah.
Which is
And
nice.
again, it's just as I love a hip carry, and in any carrier, I love a hip carry. There are a couple of other options that you can get with some types of carriers. So there's a hard hip seat called the Mia Millie. It doesn't they don't make them anymore, which is a shame because it was quite a nice hip seat. But although you could do a hip carry that we've just discussed, they also had an additional strap to make it a one-shouldered strap, so you could plug that strap in and pull it over your head like a loop. So you do get some buckle carriers that will come with additional bits and pieces to do hip carries with, but you don't need them if they can do that cross on your back.
Yep.
And unbuckle to do both a H and a cross, then you're going to be able to do a a hip carry nicely.
One spanner I want to throw in the works there is
Mhm.
just because it can cross doesn't mean you're going to get a comfortable position in that either.
Yeah.
Because you get some carriers that have very padded straps or
Oh,
very
yeah.
curved straps that sit really nice in an H, but they just don't work as well in a cross. So
Yeah.
just because it can doesn't mean it's always going to be the best option.
Personally, I feel that way doing a hip carry and an ergo baby.
Yeah.
I find the padding is really thick for my tastes.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that the whole carrier is really bulky for my tastes. For anyone who's using an ergo baby, I support you. I love that you love your carrier. It's not for me.
Yeah, and that's
and
why
yeah,
we've all got our favorites and we've all got ones that work for
yeah,
our body. And that's what we talk about a lot is we want to find a carrier that works for your body, not for you or your age, your size, your height. And we want to see what works for your body because all of our bodies are different. And we're both different. And when we need to do some content together to show how different things fit on our bodies, when we will do that, don't worry, it's coming up. But yeah, it depends how it fits.
Yeah.
So, have you got anything else to say about forward facing before we go over some questions?
I think the only thing I have to say about forward facing is that it gets a really bad rep, because we have such strict guidance about it, about the time limits and the ages and the not sleeping. It is absolutely safe to do if it's done right. You, as a parent, need to take the guidance that's given and ensure that you keep your child safe and happy. If your baby wants to be in the carrier for a million hours world facing and is happy and safe, we're not going to stop you doing that. We give you the guidance because we can tell you for the most children, this is the information we have.
And that might be like 1 out of 100. So it's not, we can't say, oh, that baby loves it. And so every baby should be the same.
Yeah.
That's why we have these guides to keep you safe. And if your baby is without those guides some way, then that's absolutely fine. We will support you. But just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to be safe for everyone else.
Yeah. So again, it's not that we think you should or shouldn't world face. We want you to do it safely. So safely means within your baby having the right muscle structure to be able to hold themselves up. The carrier doesn't cover their face. They don't sleep world facing because that is never safe because of the risk to the airway, and that they don't become distressed or overwhelmed. And it's good to just think about your child and what they are observing and seeing rather than just going, oh, well, I need to do this because everybody does this. Most people don't world face.
No.
Most people.
And remember, it's an
not a
option.
developmental stage.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it at all.
Yeah.
So let's look at some questions. How do you feel confident knowing when it's safe to forward face the baby in a carrier? So I think we have covered that, haven't we? How do you know you're confident knowing when it's safe? So when your baby has reached that development stage where they're holding their head up and their torso control, they're not slumping, they can fit in the carrier safely with the panel, at least 2 fingers under the chin, you'd say, that they can move their chin freely and turn their head without the panel covering them, and they're not going to fall asleep in 2 minutes when they're in the carrier. Yeah?
Yep, I would say that.
You agree with that?
As long as they are safe. I mean, people talk a lot again about the hip position and stuff, much less important than the airway. A wide base is helpful because it helps stabilize the airway and is a bit more comfortable for the baby. But again, if you're using a narrow base world facing carrier, it's not the end of the world.
No.
It just, you might find that their heels kick off your thighs a bit more.
Yeah, and that's something you might, if you're using a narrow base carrier that offers world facing, then you might not world face as long because their legs are going to get long. And if you're a daddy carrier, you're going to get kicked in certain places that you might not want to be kicked.
It's not going to be as comfy as you think. Yeah.
Yeah, end up having lots of bruises on your legs, and it's not a good feeling at all. How long do you usually carry your baby forward facing before switching positions? So again, we've covered this. You want to take it?
Roughly up to about half an hour at a time, with the caveat that if your baby is awake, happy, alert, doing all their happy coo and baby things, and you want to carry them a bit longer, that is your option as a parent. But our guidance would say up to about 30 minutes at a time, and then turn them around, take them out, do something else with them. Again, doesn't mean you have to stop carrying. It just means we would suggest after 30 minutes switching the position up.
Definitely. And also, when you are swapping positions, always make sure that you adjust your carrier accordingly.
Yeah.
So if you have to adjust sliders or buttons to forward face, make sure that they're adjusted, because a lot of times we will see people that have just turned their baby around to forward face and still got the wide buttons or the wide sliders, or they have had their baby forward face and turned them back and they're still on the narrow. So that's not offering baby support. We still need those buttons wider when they're facing you. So make sure you know your carrier before you do any of these things. Someone stopped me and asked if forward facing was okay or allowed. Is it
Of course it's
allowed?
allowed. Of course it's allowed. As long as
As
you know what you're
long
doing. I
as
mean,
long as
as long as you know what you're doing. So, I mean, a big one that is really contentious, even amongst baby-wearing professionals, is world facing in a woven wrap. And a lot of people don't like it. I know Lorna's face is just like, don't do it. But again, it's possible. I mean, I had a friend
lots of
who,
things are possible.
yeah, lots of things about, but I had a friend who was world facing in a woven wrap. She is very, very handy with woven wrap. She's the person who taught me. And she was world facing her son in a woven wrap because they were going on a very low and very safe zip line. They weren't like going across the tops of trees. They were in a park.
That would be
But um,
wind's
but
blowing in your hair, your cheeks.
but he wanted to hold on. He was a toddler. He was engaged. So she world faced him, gave him a triple layer bucket seat thing that she created. Because if she had him on her back, which was her other option, when she got on the thing, if she leaned back, he would have hit off the ground. So there, while a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, you cannot world face in a woven," I mean, you physically can. You can do it. It's just the level of skill to make sure it is safe is much, much higher than it is to do it in a buckle carrier that's designed for it.
Yeah.
So, is it allowed? Anything is allowed in baby wearing as long as your baby remains safe.
Yeah.
And that's why the guidance is there to ensure safety for the most possible people. It's much like car seats, like, you don't have to use the top of the range car seat that costs like £1 billion. You can
No thanks.
use like a cheap one. It's up to you how you
Making sure
use it,
it's
and making sure it's safe and
yeah.
it fits the need of your child. So if you use a carrier beyond its instructions and its guidance and its testing limits, that is a risk that you need to be aware that you're taking. That's why we do not recommend you do that. But allowed, absolutely. Absolutely allowed to
Definitely.
use your
As long
carrier
as
that
your
is rated
carrier
for
is
world
suitable.
facing. Yeah.
Exactly. And last one, how do you handle overstimulation when carrying baby outward facing? Turn them back in.
Yes. Yes.
Simple. If baby is overstimulated or not happy, then just turn them back in or take them out the carrier for a wee break. It's quite easy. You don't want to keep them in. If they're obviously overstimulated and not happy, you're not going to keep them in that position. You're going to change something. So change the position by facing you or taking them out and put them on your shoulder or go away from what's overstimulating them. So like if you're a day out at the zoo or the beach or something that's got a lot going on, then take them away from that environment and that'll help. Definitely. So I think that was a good chat about things, and hopefully it's made things a lot clearer for a lot of people. If you are listening to this and you have any questions, please pop them in the question box and let us know, and we will come back to you and answer any questions. And we should be able to do some content now that I'm recovering a wee bit better. We will get some content up for you so that you can actually see things in action and how to forward face safely and all the safety checks that we want to kind of go over as well. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. I think that's it. Just as always, a massive thank you to Carifit for sponsoring the episode. And obviously, if you want a world-facing carrier, you can pick one of them up with our show code, which is Coorie, and you
Yes.
get 20% off.
Yes.
So you can always pick up a wonderful world-facing carrier that way if you want.
Nice.
And there's a link in the show notes.
Definitely. Perfect. Cheerio.
Bye.